one case that we'll see if they do anything before Election Day that could be one of the last impacts of the lawfare against Trump on Election Day is the skepticism that even the Democratic New York Court of Appeals expressed at oral argument concerning the insane monetary judgment against Donald Trump.
So the oral arguments before the Court of Appeal, the Appeals Court of New York, I don't want to ever get too optimistic because sometimes, or at least I found oftentimes, when they're hard on somebody, it's to look objective so that when they rule in their favor, they can say, well, at least I was hard on them during the oral arguments. But the panel, I don't know who the judges were, but I think even one of them who was asking these questions was a Democrat appointee. I don't remember if it was.
I think they're all Democratic appointees, to my knowledge.
And so I forget the guy's name. I'll find it in a second. But was asking basically what was Trump's defense is like, didn't you go a little bit scope creep on this law, which is like expand it beyond what its intention was in terms of going after two sophisticated entities. This is what the judge said, which is what Engoron treated the banks like they were little babes in the woods. And I must have said that 50 times at the time to say, oh, they were duped into loaning money to Trump as if they didn't do their own due diligence, as if they didn't ask for their own financial documents. And so the judge, whichever one it was, and I'll get his name, says, these are sophisticated actors. Nobody complained. Nobody lost anything. And don't you think you're not overreacting, but rather over expanding the scope of this law, which was intended to right wrongs when there was a complainant? And the response was in my view, wholly unsatisfactory response, which was, well, there wasn't anybody who was a victim in this case, but that doesn't mean that this is a victimless crime because others might so exploit this and do what Trump did, and there will be real victims in the future. They were grilling the prosecutor of this in a way that anybody with half a brain understood they should. What do you think they're ultimately going to do?
I think that 75, 80% chance that they throw it out. I am a betting man, so those would be the odds I would set. There's probably going to be a market up somewhere for it, Poly Market, Kalshi, someplace else. But once they were brought, they were political theater, and they would be show trials, but that they would walk back from the edge of actually enforcing any of them before Election Day. And so far, that's exactly what we've seen in all the cases. And I think that's what we're going to see here, because the problem was always beyond Trump. For political theater against Trump, fine, use it for Election Day. And the New York Court of Appeals would deliberately probably delay their ruling until after Election Day. An honest court would know how to answer this. But they're ultimately going to step back from the breach. And it's because they don't want to give the Attorney General the power to target anybody anywhere, or New York is going to massively lose investors. And that's already been threatened by high-profile investors who said, we're getting the hell out of New York if you go forward with if this case is not reversed. There's no way we're going to trust ourselves to the whim of a random state prosecutor who can broadcast in advance their political motivation and bankrupt me, even without there being any victim. It's an unheard of case, unprecedented case. I mean, everything about Trump's cases are unprecedented, unparalleled. And what we said at the time, even these judges were recognizing, how do we issue a $400 million fine without a victim? How is that within your power again?
With sophisticated players, it's not someone duping a grandma out of her life savings. It was the judge was David Friedman. I forgot where I took the screen grabs on my phone. And now a brief pause from this vlog for a word from our sponsor.
But what if the unexpected danger wasn't something outside your door, but inside your own body?
And we're going to pause the video there. Peeps, have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? I recently saw a video he made and I was shocked. He's in his 80s, still kicking butt, working out, and staying active. What's even more shocking, he's stronger, can work out longer, and has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by making just one change. He says he feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing it, and she says she's never felt better. She feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/Viva or by clicking on the link in the video below. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/Viva or the link in the description. You won't believe how simple it is. Just a reminder, the legendary Chuck Norris is a whopping 84 years young, and he still has more energy than most Americans out there. He discovered he could create dramatic changes to his health simply by focusing on 3 things that sabotage our body as we age. Watch his method by clicking on the link in the description box below, chuckdefense.com/Viva. And now back to the vlog. David Friedman and the Deputy Solicitor General Judith Vale. She starts talking and they cut her off and they say, the accusation was, are they not expanding this to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners? And then the answer was, there was another question where it says, I think you hear underneath all these questions, the question of mission creep, said Peter Moulton. Has this article morphed into something it was never meant to be? And then the deputy, whatever her name is, I will stress, Your Honor, this does not have to harm the public and the markets. This does not have to harm the public and the markets, but everybody knows it.
That's been their defense all along. Trust us, this was only for Trump. That doesn't work legally, nor does it work politically. And so that's the problem. That's why they have almost no choice but to reverse it and validate it. The only question is whether they wait, unless they want to risk New York's economic future based on an insane interpretation of an insane law to begin with. I assume they don't. I assume that, New York, if they're anything, they're political hacks, but they're super sensitive to the impacts on the financial markets, because the financial markets for the entire world split their time between New York and London. So the New York relies, it's high-end real estate is mostly foreign investment. New York could be seen as a political jurisdiction that could subject anybody they want, anytime they want, to being basically bankrupted and imprisoned, like they're trying to do with Trump, based on novel interpretation of cases that no one's ever heard of being applied in this manner before. You can't have a victim when the so-called victim says they weren't a victim. You just don't have it.
Well, they did. It
was always a ridiculous, action.
They did it with Tate. They said those victims who we say were human trafficking victims, when they say they're not, it's because they are. In this case, they're saying, look, the victim here is the people of New York, not the banks who made their money.
Who profited in tax payments, profited in successful real estate developments, profited by investments, profited with jobs.
You think that there is a better chance than not? I haven't seen a market for this yet, but there's a better chance than not that they withhold rendering a judgment until after the election.
They're partisan enough to do that.
Yeah, but also it's October, November. I once was sitting on a judge for 6 months to get a ruling on a motion to disqualify for conflict of interest of the attorney. This is they wouldn't even have time to draft this if they started yesterday. So they got some
you'll see after the election a massive walk back of the lawfare. Is my informed speculation.
The flip side to that is they might, depending on the outcome of the election, if Kamala gets elected.
You have a president, you're going to try to lock him up. You're going to try to bankrupt him then. You're going to create a massive constitutional crisis. This was always theater. This was theater to influence the election. I think even if he lost, they were going to dump the cases later. And then say, actually this went a little too far. We want to restrict this. But they needed the theater in the interim.